this journey, and their time with us has ended. It takes a long time to get ready and prepared to, you never obviously move on, but to live with it, and then you live with it, and then eventually life, you find joy again, and you can try and thrive again.
Yeah.
Until someone else dies.
and then Hi, and welcome to A Class of Their Own podcast, revealing the human stories behind their name. We will hear honest and intimate reflections from our guests who, despite their circumstances, shape a world that reflects their unique visions of success. Join me, Mira Magecha, to learn from these inspirational people and take the first step to make your own change. On today's episode, we're joined by Joe Roberts-Walker. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, fantastic today. So I think spring has finally sprung in London. So yeah, shorts and t-shirt weather pending.
So Joe, I met you over the airways, on LinkedIn specifically, and I read a post and an article, which was a bit tragic, and I'm sure we'll get to that. And that's what encouraged me to reach out to you to come onto the podcast and share your story.
Yeah, as I say, yeah, no, really looking forward to it. I think it's a bit more than tragedy to me, I hope. But yeah, it's always lovely to be able to come to these things and to speak and to share stories, learn from others, and yeah, basically enjoy a good conversation.
And that was a good conversation because we ended up planning on having a conversation for about 5 minutes to just do a quick intro. And I think we were on the phone for about 2.5 hours that evening.
Yeah, no, it's lovely.
So we start each conversation with who the guest is. So I'm going to start exactly the same way, which is, who is Joe?
It's interesting when you introduce yourself, what defines you most.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have always said it was my profession, but I enjoy my profession so much and my startup business that it has become my lifestyle and probably my key identifier. So I'm the founder of a juice company called Magecha. There you go. Great timing there. So we make cold pressed ginger shots, and we deliver them across the city of London, or London in general, sorry. And the key thing is a focus on sustainability, making fresh tasting juice that is enjoyable, and trying to create a community that are a bit more conscious about some of their consumption habits, and hopefully alter and shift some of their attitudes that inform their behaviours, and to see, you know, when it comes to that point of chucking away or using single-use plastics, we're, you know, at least having a thought about and consideration about it before we go ahead. So we have a glass reuse model, and it works really nicely. We've got some wonderful corporate clients and people that order them domestically. So it's like a milkman style model.
Great.
And it's just been, 3 years in, and it's just been, it's an absolute joy and pleasure in my life at the moment. Great.
What a great way to start. So we're going to start slightly differently. And we're going to try one. Well, I'm going to try one. This is going to be the first one I'm having.
So you got Zeus, which is the first ginger shot we ever made. So that's spinach, royal garlic apple, and fresh root ginger.
Great.
And I've got turmeric, which is probably going to spill all over my nice chino colours.
Let's not get turmeric over the rug.
Yeah, cheers.
Wow, that's amazing. That is super gingery and amazing.
Yeah, that one there's got the most ginger in it, so packs a real punch.
Really packs a punch, and I feel like I got spinach on my nose. So going back to who Joe is, you started with Magecha.
Yep.
And that's a big part of your life and a big part of who you are today.
Yeah, massive, yeah.
But what are the characteristics that make up Joe?
So it's a really good question. I mean, we'll come across, I'm sure, if it hasn't already, I don't like to take life too seriously. I love to have a laugh. I enjoy making other people laugh more than anything. Always been the class clown, always been the idiot, getting sent out of class. I don't know how many times I was sent out of school. Never like anything like nefarious or nasty, but always silly things, like trying to distract people, trying to make them laugh, just get out the class, right? So. Yep. And to be honest, I think like that distraction and, constantly wanting probably attention, but also just interaction is something that's never really changed. And I think even when you saw on like my social media and LinkedIn posts, I'm a satirist, I love satire. I love to take a serious subject, flip the perspective on it with some stupidity to really reveal sometimes how pathetic some of the things we talk about or care about so much are. And when you break them down, they mean nothing. And that's been a part of my character. That's the way I've always been. But I suppose, like, yeah, certainly life events. And I think as I've grown older, and you look back on certain things, I'm sort of, I still like to have that perspective on things because life is too short. I think you need to always find joy in what you do. It's very easy to say that when you're in a position of being in comfort or joy. But, the pursuit of happiness is ultimately, I think, is where you want to get to. It's the metric that drives me. And in terms of a KPI, it's the one that really should drive everyone. I know that's not the case for everyone. Most people, financial goals, family goals. But I think if you've been in a position where you have been unhappy or you've been through grief or depression, finding a happiness is a real joyful journey in life. Maintaining it and being content, especially with ADHD brain, is almost impossible. But I think if you can have those moments where you can reach that time in your life or a feeling or something gives you that feeling, then enjoy it, get the most out of it, because I think there's that saying, isn't there? Like, we know feelings never last forever, whether they're positive, sad, emotional, love, whatever it might be. They fade, they dissipate, they might reignite, but they're never constant. So I think trying to find something that makes you feel happy or constantly brings you a surprise.
Surprise, yeah.
That's what I'd look for.
When you think about your childhood and when you think about where Joe started, what was that pursuit of success?
To be honest, like a pursuit, I mean, I had a fantastic childhood. I was raised in a family of love, from a big family, mixed race heritage. So, I've always have multiple cultures around me. Got Cornish side of my family. I've got Black British side of the family, which is, got family from Barbados. You've got these, different cultural elements that just fed into. All of them were just underpinned by fun and joy and celebrating that. And I think that, I didn't, when you see other people's families, when you get a bit older, you see your mates, family households and stuff, you're like, bloody hell, you lot are a bit strict or it's a bit rigid. Whereas like my house was the house where everyone wanted to be. Friends would always stay over. Me and my brother had bunk beds. And like, even though we were in bunk beds, we'd have mates still coming in and crashing on the floor next to us. It was like, people wanted to be there because it was a household of fun. And my mum and dad, massive part of that, because they made such an effort to be part of our lives as children growing up. And then, of course, my siblings, my older brother James is 2 years older, and my younger sister Anna's 5 years younger. But all of us had, when we got parties and friends together, we party together, like all our friendship groups. And, to this day, all these groups will get together. And then also a lot of my cousins lived very nearby. So we had this like super group of like people. So in terms of childhood and what makes me who I am and that attitude towards life and having fun is from that very fun-centric upbringing. And it could be deep-rooted in culture, hereditary culture, but I think it's just that, my mum and dad and my uncles, they're silly people and they love to have a laugh.
They know how to play.
They know how to play. I suppose that's what it is. Yeah, it is play. Whether it's music, dancing, football, sport, watching TV together on Boxing Day, all these like rituals. People just come over and we just stick Harry Hill TV burp on and just be everyone's creasing, like laughing. And I always think when you look back on memories, it's always very poignant, isn't it? That like the things that matter and the memories when you think back to them, it's always the people.
Yep.
Sometimes the places, but it's always the people and the emotion that you felt at that time. And if it's laughter with people that you adore, they're always most positive memories. So yeah, I always try and have that in my forefront of my mind, is that you want to be around good people who make you feel good. And that's kind of what I had as an upbringing. So very grateful, obviously, to my parents and my wider family as well.
From what you've said, that's what shows up for you today in who you are and what's really important to you, because you talk about satire and having a laugh and making sure you don't take yourself too seriously. Is there anything else that shows up from your childhood in who you are today?
To be honest, yeah, I mean, there's loads of stuff. My mum and dad both incredibly hard working people, um, and I think that in terms of that ethic, certainly, no shade to my dad, but my mum is just unbelievable. Like, just will work through anything, and has certainly passed that on to me, and that is in my mind all the time.
Yeah.
And I love working hard. I really, I love pushing the hours. I love the accomplishment. I'm very proud of my work. My dad's a decorator. He was always been very proud of his work. He'd always, I think everyone that's got a parent who's a tradie will know what it's like when you're driving through London and they point out all the houses that they've worked on or painted or done the carpentry for or the sparks for or plumbed. And my dad's was always like that. We always take the piss out of him for it. But, he's passed on that pride and care about his work to me. And another thing I learned from my dad very early on was that he had this almost like romantic side of his dealings with his customers or whoever it was, in terms of like, would always be very abundant with gestures of kindness, basically. So always would provide flowers for if he had a client had a baby, he sent them some flowers, things like that. And I picked up on that, very early on in business, that sometimes you can give a little that goes a long, long way. And it's not always to be seen as some sort of like manipulative transaction, like you're doing something to try and gain favour.
Something else, yeah.
Arguably, that might be a reason that, comes to mind for that sort of thing. But there's also, I think what it was actually, you can bring someone a moment of pleasure. And sometimes shock and surprise, like I say, the romantic side of it is a real joy. And I remember when I first started the business, we used to give people like daffodils and stuff, like, so they'd sort of wake up to them. And the amount of people that said like it really was quite touching. Didn't expect it. Yeah. They know they cost in the shops, and it's like, but it's a gesture, and it's shows where your place of thought is coming from. And it's like, I think whenever, it's always top of mind for me is that those sort of little gestures can go a long way. And it's always a nice way just to show gratitude, isn't it? Sometimes. So with my corporate clients now, like, always very keen to gift them at Christmas time, or if I find out it's their birthday or whatever. Because I think that they are things that I learned from my dad early on in terms of, just being,
the little surprises in life.
Yeah, building relationships. Yeah. And again, like, little touches that surprise people.
You haven't always done Magecha, because you only started it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So what were you doing before that? What was life like?
So I think the thing that really sums me up, really. So I'm a state school educated boy. Went to grew up in a decent area in Twickenham. So certainly, like, I'm not going to say I was on the wrong side of the tracks or anything, but had a great group of friends. Went to a college, and then eventually went to university. So studied politics and international relations.
Nice.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's awesome. I loved it. And because I was sort of one of those people that sort of, as you can imagine, like saying, being a class clown, I matured quite late in terms of like wanting to kind of make the most of academia and wanting to be a sort of more learned man. Like, I was always inspired by hip hop artists like Nas, Tupac, the way they told stories. But I loved the fact that they had such an entrenched knowledge of so many different subjects.
Right.
I loved history. I loved politics. And honestly, like, hip hop was the thing they used to always listen to that made me think, wow, like, how do you know this stuff? Like, I want to know this stuff. I want to be a person in a pub who is interesting to talk to, has like, breadth of knowledge and can talk about things. And I can remember like university was just such an incredible experience in terms of the people that I was with and who I lived with. And it changed me so fundamentally in terms of my own, I'd say, probably misguided perceptions of people. I think I remember thinking, I was in the 7 guys, shared accommodation. Some went to public school, some private school, and I used to think, I had a bit of chip on my shoulder thinking, oh, you guys have had it so easy.
Yeah.
And you realise, like, after the first few months, you're like, wow, people brought up in, products your own environment, but people with some amazing qualities just grew up in different places. And and they taught me so much about myself, and and that kind of acceptance, and also a willingness, knowing when you're wrong, and when to open up and know when you're ready to change. And yeah, I mean, it's get quite emotional because it was like such a wonderful time. It was so simple. All it was we didn't get enough out of the education side of uni, but it was such a wonderful experience in terms of becoming, I guess, a human that has a bit of understanding, emotional understanding, and applicable context really to situations. I sort of learned so much about people being different. So that really, sets up who I am, in the sense that I've always been fine being around different people, different backgrounds, whether that's because of mixed race heritage, never seeing anyone as being sort of different, or having a, different cultural understandings. Yeah. And it's always helped me fit into sort of any space, really. I can talk to anyone. So that's been wonderfully helpful. Wasn't helpful coming out of university, not being able to find a job for about 4 years. But
4 years?
I don't know how long we pissed around for, but it was came out during the deep recession, 2008 kicked on, graduated in 2010. There were only jobs in media sales and advertising sales, and sorry to anyone who still does that, but it wasn't what I wanted to do at all.
Yeah.
So I pissed around for about 4 years. I was a plumber's mate with my cousin for about 2 years. I worked in a pizza shop. I worked with people with learning disabilities in a cafe. So all these random little jobs. Sold radios down the road at the Oval, so at sporting events. Just loads of different little odd jobs, which actually massively helped form, again, an understanding of what it's like out there for normal people and people that are struggling. But character building, you've got to keep on.
You've got to keep going. You've got to keep grafting.
Got to keep going. There's no jobs. Keep getting rejected. You know that. Some people when they finish university get a bit of a leg up. The nepotism is real.
Yep.
And you're sort of sitting there getting jealous, getting frustrated, and it's when's my break going to come? And then, eventually, I always remember wanting to go into market research because I just loved talking to people and wanting to understand what people thought about certain subjects, concepts, ideas. And it was an industry that just massively appealed to me, to do qualitative focus groups and stuff. And eventually, I found an agency called Spinach, who...
Funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if there is something there. But they gave me a shot as an intern, and it gave me some professional office experience. And then a big break in terms of what I wanted to do came at a company called Discovery, and that was owned by a married couple called Ken and Trish Parker, who are two people who fundamentally changed my life for the better. And I just got such a tremendous amount of respect and love for what they showed me about myself, what they showed me about business, and for taking a chance on someone who definitely didn't have all the right skills at the time, but they saw some qualities in me, and they just showed me what it was about, running a business that was kind of family values at the center of it.
Which aligned with everything that you just talked about in terms of what was important to you and
100%,
growing up.
100%. And Ken sadly is no longer with us, but he is one of those people who just, it was like a granddad that I never had. And just there's a few people in your life who aren't your immediate friends and family who you could just say are those people you have just pure love for.
Yeah.
And Ken and Trish are those two for me, just because of everything they've done and become like another family. So, just a lot of gratitude.
During those years, if there was something that you could have changed on reflection, what would that be?
Great question. So I didn't have any, in terms of a focus, just very distracted and very, just went with it. But at the time we were looking for money, it was hard, just finding little bodge jobs. A lot of my friends were in the same position. So I made the most of my friends. We spent a lot of time together, and we helped each other. And in terms of looking back in terms of what I would change, I'd love to say focus and to have had a bit more of an idea of what I wanted to do, but I never would have found that without all the other experiences that come along with it. So I would never look back with deep regrets. It would have been wonderful if, we come out into our early 20s and we all had jobs in the city and we were all fucking around. That'd been fantastic. But, it wasn't the case. But, when it did eventually come, we enjoyed it even more. So it's kind of
you
like...
appreciated it more.
You appreciate it more. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what I changed. I remember always thinking that there were years that were a bit flat, but we did a hell of a lot. And I think that the excitement of, trying to find your feet in the world is really exciting. But I suppose it's more a reflection really of like, the education system before that. Like we weren't trained in business at the school I went to. No one had any idea about that sort of stuff. And we had one piece of careers advice just before we went to, to college. Whereas you do notice that, a lot of other schools, it's drilled in quite early on to think about what it is you want to be.
Where did you go to school? Where did you grow up?
Twickenham.
Okay,
So Southwest London. So I went to my secondary school was called Alliance Park School. It was wonderful. I have fantastic memories there, and great friends, great teachers, and we were really good sports school as well. So like, had some cracking records there. Played rugby, played football. And, you look, I wrote a LinkedIn post about this, and it sounded like classic wanky LinkedIn, but it's talking about like camaraderie from sport. And there is something about, a physical sport like rugby and playing for a teammate or your best mate, or tackling, whatever it might be, big hits. It's obviously very similar where sport derives from, obviously, is like conflict and, violent contact. It's like, the tribalism is so raw.
It's real.
But it's real. But obviously, when you handle it and you're taught to handle defeat and victory with dignity and respect, then it's one of the most beautiful things. I don't think anything compares to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss it so much. And even, whether it's for guys or girls playing five-a-side football, whether it's like they want to play netball, I just think it's the most important thing you can do. The social sport interaction. To exercise, feel the endorphins, dopamine hits of social interaction intertwined, and then have an element of competition, goal-driven stuff. Just wicked. And then you have the release, the celebration, whatever it is.
The misery.
The misery. Yeah, exactly. You make a mistake, you make a fuck up, you're the one to blame. Like, God, having to pick yourself up from those. I remember all those, and but they had a profound, that school had a profound impact on who I am today, and the friends I'm still friends with today. A lot of them are from that rugby team. And that's crazy when you think about it. That was 2005 I left that place. So,
wow.
20 years and just been on a stag do, and there's probably about 10 of the starting 15 were on the stag do. So, and they're not like rugby boy twats. It's like, it's none of that like drinking their own piss and all that sort of stuff. It's just decent people.
I didn't need to hear that comment, okay, moving on swiftly. You talked a bit about your mixed race heritage growing up in Twickenham and Cornwall. What, if any, prejudice or racism have you faced, or do you face?
Jesus, do you know what? It's I think people are baffled, and they think that people are oversensitive to racism. I think that you would experience it if you want a lot. Basically, is the answer. A hell of a lot, and in different forms and different styles, different severities that have messed me up emotionally in different ways. But it's something I hate more than anything. And, the idea that you could walk into any room, and this doesn't just apply to racism, like, sexism, homophobia, any kind of these awful isms. But someone could walk into a room and someone has a predetermined idea they don't want them in that room, they don't like them, or they want to physically hurt them. It makes me feel sick. And it's the one thing that I always fight so hard to defend. Always trying to avoid being violent in response, but probably the one thing that where there is a threshold, sometimes who knows what happens really, because it's just so awful. And in sport and the football pitches, used to get it all the time growing up. You get called different things. I suppose like could be seen as racially ambiguous, so you get called a packy, nigger, coon, all that sort of stuff, like non-stop. And in different areas. As soon as you go out of London, go to the periphery, Surrey, anyone around there, it's more abundant. You can avoid it in certain parts, but I was thinking about this, like my growing up teens were based on trying to avoid areas where I knew I'd get racist abuse. So we never didn't really like to go around, like, so for example, Tolworth, there was a bowling alley down there, but I never used to like going there. We'd go to Kingston, go to Richmond, but you'd always try and avoid areas where you might get it. And like, to be honest, my dad's stories, growing up in the 70s are much, much worse than mine, talking about it being so much more institutionalized and open, but I don't think that's necessarily changed. I think it's just moved into different guises.
It's also become more of it.
Yeah, exactly. And, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, are white people, or, like we talked about it earlier. I've been on dates with Indian girls before who told me that if their parents knew they were a black guy, they'd disown them. Like, and a lot of people, when they look at races, think that we're, this horrible term, which I hate, which is like how I'm not allowed to be called coloured, but people would just put me in a group called POC, or people of colour.
Yeah.
What the hell's the difference? Are me and you, our experience is the same? Like, is it non-white? What are we trying to say? Like, what, you're trying to delineate me from normal by giving me this term?
Yeah. Ethnic minorities.
Ethnic minority. I'm only half, and this half black, half white. What,
Where do you belong?
Yeah.
Why, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, our, culture has a much bigger impact on who we are as a people than our race, in terms of like what we like to do and the way we do it.
And what you eat.
Yeah. Rather than what we actually look like.
Yeah.
And I think, what I mean is, like, in terms of, I think there was a lot of stuff after Black Lives Matter, about people having this realization about race and, like, wow, I didn't know it was like this and it was this bad and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sitting there like, well, I know it makes people feel really uncomfortable, but it also feels even worse if you're being subjected to racism. And I think, like, this whole idea that's in one of the books, like why I no longer talk to white people about race, is that one where she mentions that, like, if you went into a room and something didn't happen, it could be because of your colour or your race, but you don't know that and you can't prove it, but it definitely could be.
Yep.
And a lot of people take that as like oh, shut up, like, what do you want? Like, more positive discrimination, blah, 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 whinge. Well, no, like, it wasn't that long ago that my ancestors were property in this country.
Yeah.
I go to national trusts, I got a National Trust membership, but most of that stuff is built off the proceeds of slavery. I'm always aware of that. And then when they brought light to that, everyone was kicking off about that. The statue bashing. It's the reality, and I've got mixed race heritage. I'm half, my family is just as much, my history is just as much Cornish as it is from Barbados, right?
Yeah.
And there's a real challenge to want to celebrate that in areas that people might not be so comfortable with you celebrating. For example, if I was just, to champion my Cornishness, it might be more challenged.
Do you find that the mixed race gives you more acceptance, less acceptance, or actually makes no difference? It just adds more confusion to most people?
I don't know. I mean, I think, being brutally honest, I think 100% with typically white people, white groups, I think it's probably easier and probably more digestible, even if that's not a conscious process of thought. I think it probably is a reality.
Yeah.
You see that across culture anyway, with black superstars that are nearly all mixed race. And that massively, I understand my privilege from that point of view, because I have friends with much darker black skin than me, and their experiences are very different.
Yeah.
And the names they're called or their experiences or the way people interact with them, very different. But being lighter skinned, the reality is the darker the skin, the more racism people experience. It's the same in nearly every culture in this country, and in the world globally.
Yeah.
You see it in different cultures. And I hate it. I really hate it. But, it's really sad. And that is something that I don't think will change for a long time. Certainly not in my lifetime. Anyway.
This episode is brought to you by Play for Change. Play for Change brings together leadership coaching, expert facilitation, and builds communities. They help craft real connections, spark learning, and turn play into powerful experiments to enable better relationships with yourself and others around you. To find out more, go to playforchange.co.uk. Links are in the show notes below. What has made you the person you are today?
Well, I mean, I think appreciating what you have and what you haven't got is something that takes a lot of time to get to. Obviously, like the company that I've kept, my friends and my family are probably the things that have shaped that the most. And delineating to that, like my siblings are certainly the two people that have always, we're the people that shaped each other the most. Like, as I said, we incredibly close, got very close friends as well. So it's like a big group of us, and just have always just, whether it's taking the piss out of each other, beating each other up, whatever it is, just wrestled, fought, looked after each other, had each other's back. Like, you can't beat those bonds. And my brother, we shared a room for 24 years, bunk beds. And like, you think about that in terms of how that shapes you, like that's your whole life shared with someone, isn't it? So
probably closer than you will ever be with any other human, because that was your most informative years.
Yeah, exactly. Growing up, whether it's like finding his porn stash, whether it's like, you got no privacy, having to smell every fart that rose up from the bunk bed. Just like,
Wonderful. I'm so glad I never had a bunk bed.
That's what they're for. And, we'd, at the time hated it. Bring a girl back. Jim, can you fuck off, please? Or I'm going to go downstairs, whatever it was. And we absolutely hated it, but because we were so embarrassed. But then you sort of realise like what you did have, and you've got constant company, companionship, someone to share. We watch films together, play PlayStation together, Xbox, whatever it was. You've always got that kind of partnership. So it's just he's obviously, given everything and where we are today, my siblings are always going to be the people that have had the biggest biggest impact on shaping me. Yeah, for sure.
And you said we're going to touch on
Yeah.
So you shared your room and a bunk bed with your brother for 24 years.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, eventually we both moved out. Yeah, I think that was up until I was 24, I moved out. And then, so James is my older brother by 2 years. And so he was born with congenital heart problems. He's born with 3 holes in his heart. And, sort of thing that massively, dealt a pretty shit hand, but still lived a life like to the fullest, like, still did everything everyone else his age kind of did. And even though he had difficulties with his breathing, the one thing I always admired most about my brother was that he never ever wanted to be seen as being different or needing any support or help, even though he might have done at times. Not because he was too proud. I think he just didn't want to. He didn't feel that he needed it. Always felt that he was who he was. Just a very incredible person. Always inspired by his bravery as an individual, but also as a family member. Just so proud of us all. James sadly passed away in 2016. So he was 29 years old when he passed. I was 26. Nothing obviously would ever prepare you for that. And I think because of my brother's health problems from birth, it was something that I always took extra protection and a sort of, paternal kind of brotherly role because I could. When we were at school, I remember someone having a fight with him. Made sure that didn't happen again. Always very, because sometimes, because his oxygen levels were quite low, sometimes his skin, his fingers might get a bit bluey because of the lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
Obviously, when we were younger, we used to call each other names. I look back on it, awful things we say to each other. But that's what brothers do. But if someone else called him that,
that wasn't acceptable.
Fists are coming out. Yeah, exactly.
That's not acceptable. It's okay for me to.
And I always think, like, when you look back, and it's very difficult to do this, because I think anyone could do it with any relationship they've got with anyone they've ever had. And you look back at things that you might have said or done, and it's very difficult to process some of the things you might have said or done. But I think with friends and particularly brotherhood and, you know, and siblings, you say a lot of shit to each other, but you know the love is always there. It's unconditional. And yeah, I just, you know, there's no one in this world that I would have done anything for than my brother. You know, you talk about, you always get that question whether you need to swap give him a kidney, whatever it is, a liver, a lung, even a heart. I would have done it. And I adored him. I still do. Yeah, there's so much gratitude for him and everything he's shown me in my life. And that continues to this day. I always say, like, sort of posthumously, he still inspires me. And when there's a task that I can't do, I just think, fucking hell, what would he do to be able to do that?
Yeah.
And that's a drive. That is a fucking driver. You know, I can remember when I set this business up doing 22-hour shifts, like no sleep, knowing I had some drive and some focus, there was always just the conversations with him whilst I was driving around London, you know, at, you know, whatever, 4 or 5 in the morning. Just think about memories and that guidance.
Yeah.
I'm not spiritual. I don't believe in God. I certainly don't believe a just God would ever deliver the hand they do to someone like him.
Yeah. Or
to these kids with bone cancer in different wards you see. It's like, that's not fair. So, yeah, he it's had a profound impact on my life. Obviously, losing someone or losing the person or the thing in life that you feared losing the most. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And that realization when it happens is awful. Well, it is as bad as I think anyone would imagine it to be. You know, I know a lot of people say I can't even imagine. And there's that whole thing about, you know, I can't believe this happened to me.
Yeah.
But that's life, isn't it? And I think as you get older, you're surrounded by more tragedy, more sadness, more loss, more grief. And it's how you kind of learn, repair yourself, rebuild, and try to survive whilst carrying that. And then obviously maintain the dignity and respect and legacy of them to go forward.
And so thinking about it, what is it that he still gives you every day to make him proud?
Well, life. I remember my mum saying, actually, like, sounds really brutal, but life is for the living. And that's the thing that was always, you know, I always remember that thought. Well, there's a very clear image after I had surgery, one of his operations. He had some complications from an operation, which eventually led to his death. But we got to see him, and when I came in, I was with my sister, and I can remember him sort of pointing and was like, basically, like, look after her. And that was him, really, lying in a bed in ICU. He's still thinking about other people, thinking about his siblings who he cared and loved the most. And I think that that's something that I have to carry forward as a legacy, is that love and compassion. I remember saying at his funeral, I was like, I promise that when I have children, they'll know all about you and who you were as a person. And they'll love each other as much as I loved him and he loved me. And my little sister has just produced this most beautiful thing in my life, which is my niece. And I found it really difficult at first. When she was first born, I felt this guilt that she couldn't see both her uncles. And my sister's so good at showing her Uncle Jim and like see photos, and she knows who he is. And that's that promise being lived out. And I think when you lose someone that you love, I can't explain to you how much I love my brother.
I think we can see. We can tell.
I cared for him. There's this saying about grief that grief is this pain because it's this love that it has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So it just stores in your heart, your soul, your stomach, every part of your body. And then this little girl comes into my life, and it's just like somewhere I can put this love. I wasn't able to put it anywhere before. And I adore her, and she just, that's a changing point in my life when that girl was born, because you see hope and beauty again. I never saw that. I enjoyed my business, but I didn't see hope in making everyone happy. Like my mum, my dad, you think about what grief had done to me. Imagine losing your firstborn son. And that's the thing, as a sibling, you hold this pain, but you also are grieving for your parents as well. And then Ren comes into the world, and it's just like, she's just beautiful. Anna sends pictures and videos of her every day on the WhatsApp group. It's how I start my day every day. Watch a video of my niece enjoying her life and seeing that love. And that's that promise that, we made to Jim. And I'm just very proud of my sister. I'm incredibly proud of her. And Ren is just this little part of me, which I just, pure unadulterated joy. I just love her. And I can be walking along the street and I think about her and I start crying. I think about, and I imagine when you have your own children, it's probably even stronger, but I just know what she is, I know what she's a symbol of, and I know she won't know it now, but she saved a lot of people, that were really struggling. And it's quite a powerful legacy. No pressure, Ren. Whatever she wants to be, whatever she wants to do, she's just going to be born out of love and is love. And grief is something that we're never prepared for, and there's so many people that I have to thank, and I always show that gratitude. People who some of my closest friends, whether it was the ones who were watching out for me when I was doing too many drugs or drink, or whatever it might have been, the ones that were there just to, with you, making sure, you don't go too far. I never had like massive issues or any of that. It's just more escapism, but they were with me, always hand in hand or arm around my shoulder in the rave. And I think everyone knows what I'm talking about when I talk about these people, but they, anyone who's had a drink, a coffee, a hug, shared a laugh, shared their stories about grief, like you're healing someone. And
you are.
I always find this thing about grief. You get these people who say, and I completely understand it, it's not a topic most people want to approach, right?
It's hard.
It's hard.
But I also understand when you talked about the new little people coming into your life and how much it is a new chapter. Because when my dad passed away, and we were fortunate that we had 3 little people born within 3 months, there was a new life. And the guilt we feel that dad will never meet them is just incredible.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And it's the legacy of keeping that going.
Yeah, and we spoke about it and made me really emotional when you were telling that story, and I know exactly how it feels. And you hear so many, the world's a very brutal and harsh place, and it happens to a lot of people. Not that you get like solace from that at all, but you realise, this, you can only feel your own pain and your own grief. And I always remember thinking that it's the little things that, when people say, like I said, I get it. Like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. Well, doing nothing is an action, right? And that inaction, trust me, people, they're not sitting there counting who has and hasn't sent a message, but you think about it, you're like, oh man, like, come on. Like, happened to my mum quite a lot. Quite a lot of her friends just, didn't know what to say and didn't. I was like, just maybe a coffee or just
a hug.
Just being there. I remember my friend Simon called me up only a few days after Jim passed away. And I remember thinking, that must have been imagine him like making that call, whatever. Like, took some balls, to be honest, because even though you say you want to do this, and I message people and say, oh, I'm here if you need me. This was him calling me to actively make it happen, and I wanted it to happen. And we had this call. We were laughing our heads off at memories of gym and stuff. About 3 hours in my garden, and I'll never forget that phone call. And whenever I see him, I don't always tell him that, but it was really important to me.
Yeah.
And lots of our friends did lots of different things in different ways, and over time as well. Like, I've had some fantastic conversations with people, done some wonderful things for me, and my family, and because Jim was so adored by this massive network of people, there's a people grieved together for a long, long time, and we've done lots of stuff in celebration in his name. And some friends have helped set those events up and keep them going. And his birthday, we'll always get together. With a mass, and as I say, the new life is there. These new kids that were never around, all these cousins we've got, they're there. Yeah. They're part of this story. They're part of his celebration and his memory. So that, in that post we were talking about initially, I was talking about life after grief, and it takes a long, long time. And for anyone who's listening to this and is in, I say, the pits of grief, you're feeling it every morning you wake up, it sounds like you've been knifed in the heart or the chest or the stomach. You're incapacitated by it. You can't see the value, the purpose, the point in any of the shit you're doing. Like, what is the point in doing any of this crap? It doesn't mean anything. And the meaning of life does get distorted, it does get lost. But you can find a purpose again that will give you a reinvigorated sense of purpose, or drive, I guess, and willingness and want to participate. Drop in the anger, drop in the why me, why them. And then I remember this quite a profound thing that my mum said to me. It was just that, our brother was quite a moody kid. So he probably would have wanted us to be miserable, but he wouldn't have wanted me to have derailed my life with sadness and missing him and have not done the things that I could have done with the potential of my life because he was lost to us. If I died tomorrow, I wouldn't want my sister to not enjoy and fulfill her life. This journey and their time with us has ended. It takes a long time to get ready and prepared to, obviously move on, but to live with it. And then you live with it. And then eventually life, you find joy again and you can try and thrive again. Yeah. Until someone else dies.
and then the cycle repeats sometimes. Although maybe with some added experience.
Yeah, exactly. So I always just hope, obviously, if anyone listening to this, don't die, don't get a horrible diagnosis. But you know what? That's the thing for me. I'm so aware of the fact that when it is good, you've got to enjoy it. Try, and I'm not every day like waking up like, woohoo, life, Some days are shit. But some days I think gratitude for the fact that I'm here and I've got some things that I can build on and enjoy. And then when tomorrow feels like, you get that feeling of excitement again in your life, it's a beautiful feeling. So I'm always grateful because I say, I know that there are times around the corner, a phone call you get could come out of this, a WhatsApp message, just bad news for someone. And you realise the perspective again shifts to shit. Like, I'm 34 now, I'm surrounded by friends getting ill, certainly their parents getting ill. Savage. And the amount of people it's just like law of averages that shit's gonna happen. So when it feels okay, like enjoy it. Yeah.
What's important to you now?
For me, it's still to maintain this path of trying to find joy, to bring people together who also want to partake and share joy. So not just my brother, when we talked about my family, one of the biggest things I loved about them is that we love sharing each other's contacts and friends, and people are always welcome. So many people have been to parties at my house. My brother was a massive, James absolutely loved, he used to get excited about bringing people together, like matchmaking, not necessarily dates, but just friends and stuff. And that is something I massively took from him. So I have it now, like with clients, people, customers, I'm like, oh, you should meet them, or you guys need to meet up. I love it because
Connection is what makes the world go round.
Yeah. It's just like you see these things. I'm not driven by greed. I'm not driven by money. My business is going to do very well. It just had a really nice valuation. I'm buzzing. But because I know that I'm going to get some investment and I'm going to get like 10 people jobs, salaries from an idea I created. That's fucking wicked. I love that. And that's not like an arrogant thing. I just think it's wicked. Like that something that was an idea in my mum's shower once in Cornwall. And then I drove down the A30 and I came up with a business plan, And I always think like, that is to give something back to people through something that I created and then they can be a part of and make better and drive forward. That's what's important to me now. And I adore the people that are in and around my business. They're like a little family for me, the team. And I love when I see people that are passionate about these things that, I think it's crazy as a founder, like, I know founders can be unbearable at times.
Never worked with a founder that's unbearable, ever.
Blowing smoke up our own arse all the time. But there is this, it's just this thing about like, this didn't exist unless the stuff that I did and the thoughts that went through my head and the perseverance I put through and the sacrifice. This is a creation and it's tangible and it's real. And HMRC know about it and we pay them enough to keep them away. And then I pay them, my staff, the rest. And we have customers and we have clients and they're all part of it. So we build a community and there's so much more to build. And it's the most simple saying in life. And it used to always irritate me before it made sense to me, but that was that, like, build it and they will come, right? And to anyone that's like, just any idea, like, put it down into some element of tangibility. Like I always say, write the thought down, put it in your notes. I never had a business plan when I set this business up. Like I said, I came up with the idea on a 5-hour drive home from Cornwall to Staines on the A30.
Yeah.
It went through my head and then eventually I put it down on something. But, don't, not that anyone's asking for my advice, but I just don't, I always, when you hear people talk about things that they wish they'd done or could do, like, I like being really provocative and just being like, well, why haven't you done it? Do it. And people struggle to answer it because they'll complicate it with an excuse. And I do understand why, but just put the thought down. It's just like, just get it down and make it something and then build it and they will come. Who knows where that goes?
A really left or right field question, depending on your view.
Yeah.
What don't you want people to know about you?
I don't know. I put a lot of like vulnerability, put a lot of emotional stuff out onto social media. I think like there's an element of like privacy that, like my own personal life, my relationships, my relationship with my girlfriend, I like to keep, personal. Because it's each their own. I see couples and stuff. I see people who are married and work with each other, and I think fair enough. Like, I can ever imagine doing that. But for some people it works. For some people it can be the end of their marriage. But I think there's an element of like individuality that I like to show, and and obviously I'm really learning how to separate this personal brand from Medusa brand. It's very difficult for me to do, but we're getting there. But I mean, in terms of not knowing stuff about me, I say like most stuff I say, like I'm just an idiot. I love to be silly and stupid. I think in joke all the time. I can't help thinking laughter. I see something, I try and think of some sort of joke. And to make people smile or entertain myself, it's just, and anyone who follows our social media will obviously work that out.
Oh yes, we almost fell out on jacket potato toppings.
But it's just like, I love to ridicule and just take the piss out of things, but I know that some people are very serious and they tend to not work so well with me. Obviously I can moderate it, I'm not stupid. But, I suppose in terms of like what not to know, I put most of my stuff is just out there, it's honest. Like, I can't, we do what we do what we can. I think a lot of founders, when you're growing a business, you have very overinflated optics to make yourself look like you're doing better than you might be doing. Certainly, we can certainly story tell. But, I think it's always very obvious when we're being silly and having a laugh. Like our social media is pretty much like a April Fool's Day every day. But I say we're trying to give back something, and I'm not even making this up when I tell you that you get messages from people who are saying that like your content like is a highlight of my day. Like I save your stories and then, turn the sound on whilst I'm sitting on the toilet for something. For example. And I think that
nice. I've now got this image in my head. Thanks for that, Joe.
But it's just really sweet. Like, and if you're having that sort of an impact on someone, and if it is just a bit of a relief from their day, just some stupid, nonsensical content, then that's a lovely, lovely feeling. And I like none of my friends believe me when I say that these messages happen. So I screenshot them and send them. GDPR approved already, but it genuinely is like actually it's quite extraordinary that people think that, product wise, having like a juice and being like, oh, it makes me feel great, fantastic.
They're amazing.
But from the content side, I suppose like that's where I kind of always wanted to go into, was talking and consultancy and sharing my views on things, I suppose, which is wonderful. Obviously, very grateful to be here.
Great platform. There
are some narratives that need to be challenged, and and this is the thing, like, I'm very political. I study politics and international relations. I'm a very political person in terms of like, very up to date with current affairs, not like necessarily like ideology, like party driven stuff, but some things are right, some things are wrong. And, we talked about racism, we talked about all these different things that are very prevalent in society and sort of need to be called out or questioned. And the thing that I've massively learned about myself recently, and when we talk about LinkedIn, is that who is qualified to have an opinion on certain subjects? Like, we have realised, like, and through some of the people I've worked with over the past few years, like, I've seen people in positions that I thought, a lot more about them before I actually met them, and thought, wow, actually, if you're the person doing that, like, surely anyone could have a go at this. And, particularly look at politicians, who has the right to talk about certain things? I mean, we always think that we shouldn't say things. Obviously, having an educational professionalism in the field certainly helps. But you can have ideas. You can start positive movements. You can do things differently.
Yep.
And, with a startup, our whole raison d'etre as a brand is about being disruptive, but through fun and enjoyment, bit of silliness, bring our community on a journey with us.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. And I think that when I started it, always being told, or don't do this, or don't use the floppy nose filter on your Instagram, or don't do an avatar or a filter of a granddad because you might offend people who are older. You might think you're being ageist or da-da-da. I was like, it's just fun. If someone, never any intention to ever cause any offense. And I always think about what I write before, if it's comedy based, like, could this be offensive? Could this use of song, trigger people?
Yeah.
Swearing, I swear, fuck it, I don't care. Like, if you're offended by swearing, then whatever. But I think those times have moved on. I can't help but swear. I'm from a swearing family, so we swear. But I always, I know that, there's never all we ever want to do is make people feel better and enjoy themselves. So that is the core of our brand. And it's very different, I think, to many brands that are so product focused.
It's also the core of who you are, because you talked about that right at the beginning of what's important to you and who Joe stands for. So I'm going to bring you right back to that.
Yeah.
And right back to the first question, which is, who is Joe? Based on this conversation, is there anything that you would change or add?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, actually. So a class clown is what I still am. I'm there to provide some joy into people's lives and some laughter and an injection of energy that is, comes from a place that is always intended to make someone feel better. And I provide a service that provides a product that does that. And then through my interactions with people, I always try and have some impact on their day that will leave them smiling. So yeah, I suppose that's who I am, is just not one of those, like, I never say myself as massively being positive energy, but I love to have just to poke fun at serious shit with a silly lens.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Honestly, like, it's been a pleasure. It's always nice to be able to talk. I love talking. I love talking about myself.
Amazing.
But, no, I really appreciate it. It's nice to be able to tell a story. And, yeah, I think I really appreciate the moderation and the setup and everything. It's great.
If you enjoyed that conversation, please share A Class of Their Own podcast with your friends and family. Subscribe, follow and like. It really helps us continue to grow. Keep being you through connection, learning and play. You are a class of your own.